well, we're just days away from the biggest night in all of sports entertainment, the Super Bowl of the WWE, WrestleMania 40, live from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And joining us right now here on Sports Sunday is Chris Van Vliet, the host of Insight with Chris Van Vliet, and it's available on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcast. Chris, thanks for joining us, man. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Tim. Thank you so much for having me. And man, I'm pumped to talk a little wrestling.
I know it's been a long time since you and I got together to talk about WWE and the entire landscape of professional wrestling. But before we dive into the weeds of WrestleMania 40, let's lead off with Triple H, as he's been the head man and creative of the WWE ever since Vince McMahon has left the company. Just want to get your thoughts on Triple H's leadership with WWE and his creative side of the company and how things are going.
So with Triple H in charge over the last year or so, I gotta say, as a wrestling fan, the product has never been hotter. And it's funny, The Rock said this recently on SmackDown, but it's true. Like, wrestling is cool again. And if you're a lapsed fan or you haven't watched it a long time, my goodness, now is the best time to get involved and to turn Raw or SmackDown or Dynamite back on. Wrestling is hot right now. And what Triple H is a master of is this long-term storytelling. He'll give us a little piece of it one week and a little bit more the next week, and then a little bit more the week after that, with a payoff at a premium live event. And I gotta say, there was a time in wrestling, Tim, when we would like question, like, what is going on here? And now I feel like we've got a lot of faith in what Triple H is doing.
Exactly, because I remember like a few years ago where it seems like WWE had like its peaks of like, oh, like this is a great idea, or this is an idea where it's like, why is WWE deciding to do a creative role like this? You know, I was watching a few days back the Daniel Bryan Yes movement up in Memphis, you know, back in 2014. Like that was, to me, was like a peak of WWE in the 2010s. Now, over the last few years, it's gone down, but it seems like recently with Triple H taking over, it seems like it's like everybody's talking about wrestling again, and like for us wrestling fans, it's really cool, especially when now you have Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson back in the ring. And let's get into that storyline with the Bloodline versus Cody Rhodes. You know, what's your thoughts on that storyline, and you know your thoughts on The Rock's involvement back within WWE?
The Rock being back in WWE has taken it to like a whole new level. And for people who have been watching wrestling for a while, you know what he's doing now, turning heel as a bad guy. This harkens back to the character he played 20 plus years ago in that Hollywood version of The Rock. What's amazing is The Rock is arguably one of the biggest stars on the planet. Him coming into WWE brings all of these eyes to WWE. And the storyline going on right now with the Bloodline and The Rock's involvement in that, and Cody and wanting to finish the story, it's must-see TV. And what's so interesting is there was a time in wrestling when we took the good with the bad, right? Like we saw some good stuff and we also saw some stuff that kind of made us roll our eyes a little bit. Right now, top to bottom, all across the card is great. And it actually reminds me of how things were in the Attitude Era, which is like the late 90s, where like you want to tune in for everything. And the fact that we have a storyline going on right now with Roman Reigns being the champion for 3+ years, The Rock coming back and his ties to that whole thing, the fact that they've been telling this story now for like 3+ years, that reminds me of like something like you'd see in like Game of Thrones or Succession. Like this is like episode after episode, season after season.
And even the most exciting part about it is, you know, some people say the Royal Rumble is the start of WrestleMania season, but here in Birmingham, you know, when The Rock showed up on SmackDown unexpectedly, around here people were excited to get back into watching wrestling again, because it's like, oh, The Rock's back. He's all of a sudden now he's a heel Rock, which we haven't seen in a while. And I want to get your thoughts on that too, because you know every time like The Rock would come back out, do his part-time appearances, it's always the babyface Rock. Let's talk about the heel Rock, and especially for you, you've been a wrestling fan for a long time. What's the difference between like a heel Rock and a babyface Rock?
So I think the babyface Rock, the good guy Rock's just trying to get the crowd to cheer him. He's saying all of his catchphrases and the audience is saying them along with him. The heel Rock really has an edge to him. And if you've been following The Rock on social media over the last month or so, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The things he's saying on social media in that wrestling sphere, in that wrestling world, are not exactly PG. And I love that he just continues to push the envelope. And we're seeing some of the best work that The Rock has done, maybe over the course of his entire career. And I'm not just talking about The Rock, the wrestling character, like as Dwayne Johnson, like this may be the best work that he's ever done.
Exactly, too. And I think it's also a good thing for him. And who knows, he might be in ring shape for his tag team match against Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins on night 1. But if he's not in ring shape, which is a good thing, because I remember the Cena Rock, once in a lifetime, where we had it twice. If he's not in total ring shape, I think saving him in a tag team match is a good thing for night 1, because who knows, this storyline with the Bloodline versus Cody Rhodes, it can go all the way into SummerSlam, or even start, or finish up next year at WrestleMania. But we'll go back to the Bloodline versus Cody Rhodes in just a little bit. Let's talk about who do you think has a chance to steal the show at WrestleMania? Like, is there any match or is there any superstar that you can see that can be, being the main eventer or the MVP of WrestleMania?
So I think the MVP over the last few years has really been Seth Rollins. He has been such a workhorse for WWE, and he's really elevating that World Heavyweight Championship. That match between Seth Rollins and Drew McIntyre really has the opportunity to steal the show, not just that night, but for the weekend as a whole. And I feel for Drew McIntyre because he won the WWE Championship at WrestleMania 36, and if you remember that was right when COVID started. So he won the championship, but didn't really get that WrestleMania moment. He's holding up the championship in an empty arena with absolutely nobody there. So I think that match has the opportunity to steal the show. And that's going to be a huge moment if, and I'm thinking when Drew McIntyre wins that championship, he gets that WrestleMania moment that he didn't get 4 years ago.
Before WrestleMania begins, obviously there's the WWE Hall of Fame induction, and Paul Heyman might be one of the greatest managers of all time in history, not just WWE, but in professional wrestling as a whole. What do you think, or your thoughts on his Hall of Fame induction speech? Is it going to be, people going to be crying? Are they going to be laughing? Or is just the Philadelphia crowd is going to just take over when Paul Heyman just even steps up to the microphone before he even says anything?
This is going to be an all-timer. This speech is going to be one that we're going to be talking about for years and years to come. It's so fitting that Paul Heyman does this in Philadelphia, which is, of course, the home of ECW. But he's done so much over the course of his career. A lot of people just know him for starting ECW. But even before that, and obviously what he's doing now, Paul Heyman is so good on the mic, and what he's great at doing is tugging at our emotions and pulling at our heartstrings. He is going to have us in the palm of his hand. If he wants us to laugh, we're going to laugh. If he wants us to cry, we're going to cry. That speech is going to have a little bit of everything, in my humble opinion, and I think that's one that we're going to be talking about for a long time.
Last question, Chris. Who walks out as champion at WrestleMania? Does Cody Rhodes, does he finish the story here at WrestleMania 40, or is Roman Reigns, is he going to be the Universal Champion when we wake up on Monday morning?
Oh, this is so tough because I know you're going to hold me to this, Tim, but I've been saying this for the last year, so I will continue saying it now. I don't see any situation where Cody Rhodes doesn't walk out as the champion after WrestleMania Night 2. I also would have said that last year, and I actually think the booking last year, WrestleMania 39 here in LA, was actually pretty smart because it gave us another year of this story to be told. But I just feel like everything is culminating to this moment for Cody to have that moment, to finish that story. I could be wrong, and I'm totally okay being wrong, but my pick, as we sit here right now, is Cody will win the championship. And I also think this will be the first of many championships that he holds.
I definitely agree. With Cody Rhodes leaving AEW to come back to WWE, I think he's going to finish his storyline at WrestleMania. But then again, WWE is always known for pulling that hook at the last minute, where it always makes you want to tune in every Monday night for Raw or Friday night or SmackDown. Chris, thank you again for joining us. And real quick, where can we find the Insight with Chris Van Vliet? Where can we watch and listen?
Thank you so much for having me, Tim. Wherever you listen to podcasts, go check out Insight with Chris Van Vliet. I just had a recent episode with John Cena. We chatted for over an hour. So please, wherever you listen to podcasts, go find my podcast, Insight with Chris Van Vliet, and then you can find the interviews on YouTube as well.
Chris, thank you for joining us. And I can't wait for your next episode when Diamond Dallas Page puts you through one of his yoga workouts. So you could just see you like that face exactly, to see you be in pain. But thank you so much, Chris. And Dee, we'll toss it back to you.